Hi everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Today in the shop we have a customer that drove his Honda Accord V6 from New Hampshire. This is a 2008 model. He drove it from 8 hours away, and the customer complaint is occasionally it's misfiring and just lacks power, especially noticeable when it's warm in town. You pull up to a stop sign, it's shaking, it's not happy. So let's dive into this thing. It has a somewhat unfortunate history with the engine, and we'll see if we can diagnose it and repair it with minimal parts and minimal budget. So 2008 was the first year of the EVIL VCM. That's Honda cylinder deactivation system. So cylinder deactivation and auto start stop are the two completely worthless, useless, evil features on modern vehicles. Engines do not like when cylinders are deactivated. It leads to oil burning, and the valve train is much more complicated and obviously less reliable. So you might be saving, a few drops of gasoline, but in the long run you're going to pay thousands of dollars if the system goes bad. Honda, GM, Chrysler, this cylinder deactivation stuff is garbage, okay? I don't care who makes it, it's not good. So if you can get a vehicle without it, that's what I recommend. Let's scan it for codes and look at the customer email and the history of what was done to this engine. And the customer writes, "Hi Evan, nice to meet you. Been watching your videos for a long time, just for the fun, and never thought I might use your service. So I got my car from a friend in 2019. It had 130,000 miles. Car was from Arizona. 135,000. He changed some stuff. At 150,000 miles, it stopped unexpectedly on the highway. One of my local mechanics from Afghanistan repaired it for $3,500. He did a timing belt job, and one piston is bent, he said. So probably bent valve. Unfortunate. That's on the owner. That's owner neglect. He didn't replace his timing belt on time. So somehow he fixed my car. Alright. After that repair, car's working perfectly, but computer says misfire in cylinder 5 and 6. I moved to Nashua, New Hampshire in 2022. Misfire appears when the weather is cold and goes away when the weather is warm. So that really sounds like a valve clearance problem. We've seen this before on other Hondas. I thought it might not be a major one. At 179 now, I did watch one of your YouTube videos on Honda misfires, and I thought my car also needs a valve adjustment. Okay, that's a good idea. So I took it to Honda service to do that. They did valve adjustment, steering fluid change, brakes, rotors, right calipers. Misfires were even worse. Cars vibrating like crazy. After the repairs, after it was at the Honda dealership. They showed it to my local mechanic, who did some sensor changes and changed spark plugs, and the issue persisted. Then again, I took it to Honda, and they told cylinder 6 is misfiring. It might fix it if they change the front spool valve. So this front spool valve, we'll see what that is in a little bit. They changed it and didn't fix it. Now they're telling me to replace with a new engine. I've already spent close to $5,000 on it this year, and just going round and round without fixing issues. I tried to save my car since Honda is going with smaller engines. This is my last resort. Please fix the issue. Be willing to tow it here or drive it. So he wants it fixed, whatever it takes. He already spent $5,000 in this thing. Unfortunate. So this would have probably never happened if the timing belt didn't break, if the owner actually followed the prescribed manufacturer maintenance schedule. But car's here, so let's scan it. And I also asked him, can you send me the receipt, the latest, for the latest visit to the Honda dealer? I want to know exactly what they did, exactly what they replaced, and just see what we're up against here. Alright, so here is the invoice from the dealership. So customer states the engine light is on, vehicle feels like it's misfiring. So this is after the valve clearance change and adjustment, I guess. This is the second time he took it to the dealer. And you see right there, valve, front spool valve, that's the part number. So what they did was swap coils, plugs, and injectors. Still misfires on cylinder 6. Swapped oil pressure switch and no change. Compression is good. Recommend replacing front spool valve and retesting. Replace spool valve. Engine still misfiring at idle. Recommend replacing engine. Holy crap. So they charged them almost $900. So this spool valve is, you know, $300 plus $600 in labor. And now they tell him he needs an engine for an intermittent misfire problem. What the heck? These guys should be ashamed of themselves. This is theft. Like, hey, we'll just, you know, if you pay for it, we'll install it. No, it just needs an engine. Okay, there's no excuse for that. So now let's scan it for codes, see how it drives. I already did a preliminary, you know, test drive with the customer when he brought it over. It actually drove really nicely, pretty smooth. But he says the weather needs to be warm for this misfire to really start happening, and you need to drive it around, like, you know, city streets or whatever. Apparently once it happens, it'll just stay misfiring like a dead cylinder. So the initial code scan, when the customer dropped his car off, we have this P3497 valve pause system VPS stuck off. That's the only clue we have. That was stored in history. So before touching anything, before even looking at the car, I want to know, how does this VPS system, whatever, cylinder deactivation system, works? What is setting this code? What is the computer seeing? And then we'll be able to look at live scan data and go under the hood, do some checks, see what's going on with this thing. Okay, let's do some research. So this is one of the most important steps. We want to know how the system works. If we don't know how it works, we're just going by trouble codes, chances for success are actually very slim. So, variable cylinder management system on this J35Z2 engine. VCM system activates the cylinders based on driving conditions. System has 3 modes: 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder pauses number 3 and 4, and 3-cylinder pauses the rear bank of cylinders. And the layout is cylinders 1, 2, 3 are in the rear bank, 1, 2, 3 is the rear bank, 4, 5, 6 is the front bank. Kind of like a Ford. That's how Honda labels their cylinders. So on paused cylinders, the intake and exhaust valves are kept closed. Since the valves are closed, the friction losses from valve spring compression and pumping are reduced because no air is compressed in the cylinder. Well, okay, this reduces engine drag. Yes. So here's like a drive cycle. You're in 6-cylinder while accelerating, then you're in 3-cylinder while cruising, and then back to 6-cylinder, then 4-cylinder if you're cruising faster. Ridiculous. But how does this thing work? 6-cylinder mode. With rocker arm oil control solenoids A, bank 1, B, bank 1, and A, bank 2 off. So if all the solenoids are off, there's 3 solenoids, the rocker arm oil control valves direct oil pressure, enters secondary rocker arm from the oil passage's rocker shaft, and it moves the VTEC switching piston, sliding it into the primary rocker arm and locking the primary rocker arm and the secondary rocker arms together. Rocker arms are lifted by the camshaft. All cylinders are active. So here we go. Here's a nice picture. So this is 6-cylinder mode, and these are the 2 solenoids on the rear bank and 1 solenoid on the front bank. So the rear bank cylinders 1, 2, and 3 can be deactivated, and then on the front bank just cylinder 4 can be deactivated. Okay? So 6-cylinder mode, all the rocker arms are active. You can see here this little there's a return spring for each rocker arm, and it pushes this little pin to lock it with this the primary and the secondary. Secondary pushes on the valve, the primary is pushed by the camshaft, and if they're locked together, then the whole thing depresses the valve. Okay, makes sense. These are the exhaust rockers, these are the intake rockers. Same for cylinder number 4. So in 4-cylinder mode, let's see, with rocker arm control solenoid A bank 1 and A bank 2 turned on by the PCM, the front and rear rocker arm oil control valves switch to oil pressure, enters cylinders number 3 and number 4 primary rocker arm from the oil passage in the rocker shaft, causing the VTEC switching piston to slide into the secondary rocker arm and against the return spring. This disengages the primary rocker arm from the secondary to stop valve activation. Number 3 and number 4 cylinder rockers arms do not move, and they're paused. That's why it's called the VPS valve pause system. Okay, so here's the diagram. So we have this little piston or solenoid's activated, and it just switches off cylinder number 3 while 1 and 2 are still active, and then this solenoid on the front bank switches off cylinder number 4. So 3 and 4 are disabled. In 3-cylinder mode, it switches the solenoid B on bank 1. So this is solenoid B, and it sends oil pressure to all of the rockers on bank 1. Okay, so cylinders 1 and 2, and then also the cylinder 3 through the solenoid A that was used before, but now it's not active, but it's still passing the oil through and disabling the whole rear bank. Okay, and then there's this rear rocker arm oil pressure switch. That is a check by the engine computer to see if the solenoid worked and if there's oil pressure in this gallery to disable or enable the valves. Okay, so that's great description and operation. Now let's see what sets this trouble code. P3497, valve pause system, stuck off bank 2. Okay, that's very key because in the health report it just says VPS stuck off. It doesn't say bank 2. So this is specifically for bank 2, which is cylinder number 4. Okay, so again we have our little description here: 6-cylinder mode, 4-cylinder mode, 3-cylinder mode, and this chart is what the computer is looking for and when it sets the different codes. So the first scenario is if all the solenoids are off, we're in 6-cylinder mode, and these oil pressure switches that check the solenoid operation, they're supposed to be rear switch off, low, front switch off, low. That's normal. Okay. Now, the 3497 in this scenario can set if the front switch, the oil switch, is for some reason stuck on. Okay, all the solenoids are off, the oil switches, the feedback is supposed to be off, but it's not. So that's one scenario. The second scenario is if the solenoid, let's see, 4-cylinder mode, 2 cylinders are paused. I think this is slightly incorrect because in 4-cylinder mode, solenoid A bank 1 and solenoid A bank 2 are supposed to be on, not B. But in any case, the normal would be both switches are on, the rear and the front. 3497 would happen if the front oil switch didn't respond to solenoid A bank 2 being commanded on. Okay, so there's two scenarios here. And the third scenario is in 3-cylinder mode, cylinder 4 is supposed to be active, so that solenoid's not being switched on. However, if that front switch is on when it's not supposed to be, it'll set the 3497. Okay, so we know what the computer's looking for in this case. Now we know exactly what to look for in scan data. we'll run the car, monitor these solenoid commands and the oil pressure switch feedback, drive it, see if we can get it to act up, see if there's anything weird going on with those oil pressure switches in the VCM system, and we'll see where it goes. While the scanner's booting up, let's do a quick visual inspection under the hood. First thing before we forget, let's check the oil level and see what it looks like, because that is key to the system, operation. So wipe that off. I'm sure it's been replaced recently, so it's definitely full. It looks fairly clean. I'm not worried about oil level. Now, what did the dealership replace? This spool valve. So it's this assembly right here. You can see the two wires go to that solenoid, the VCM solenoid for cylinder number 4. Then this is the feedback single wire oil pressure sensor. So when this solenoid activates, the sensor is supposed to see oil pressure, and it's supposed to push those little pins and deactivate cylinder number 4. On the rear bank, we have a little more going on. We have two solenoids, black connector and a green connector for this VPS system, and then one sensor, feedback oil pressure sensor right there. So this looks all original, untouched. So it looks like they replaced this piece right here. It looks like just 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Gasket right there. Then I see blue RTV sealant between this piece and the cylinder head. I see a lot of gray RTV sealant sticking out right there. So this engine is not a virgin. It's been repaired by the Afghanistan guy when the timing belt snapped, and apparently it drove fine for a couple years after that. And then he had some slight misfires on 5 and 6 supposedly. Then it went to the dealer to get just a valve adjustment, and then this started happening where it's a hard miss intermittently. So, and then they recommended replace the spool valve. That didn't help. Then they recommended replace the whole engine. Just fantastic. Okay, Honda OEM menu. Let's read the fault code. 3497. That was stored from last time. So I want to clear this out, start from scratch, because on a cold start it seems to run okay. Clear fault memory completed. Read fault code. No trouble codes. Okay, great. Now, data stream. Let's just search for oil. Select all of these and see what's available. So front rocker arm oil pressure switch, rear rocker arm oil pressure switch. These are the two feedbacks. Then we have rocker arm control solenoid A bank 1, and then A bank 1 return, A bank 2 return, and then B bank 1 return. Rocker arm oil pressure sensor, rocker arm oil pressure sensor, volts and PSI. So let's fire it up. So right now it seems to be running decent, maybe not 100% smooth, but all the cylinders are active. You can see the scanner's vibrating a little bit. So everything's off, right? So this is fine. It wouldn't set a code right now. You can hear a little puff puff. Should we look at misfire counters? See, it's not as smooth as it should be. So let me find misfire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cylinder 6 is counting up. What about that? So, Cylinder 5 has a few. Interesting. So we can take the scanner with us and do a little cylinder drop test. So this is going to be cylinder number 6. Okay. Cylinder 5. Cylinder 4. Definitely a change in cylinder 4. And did I break the misfire counters? The cylinder 6, almost no contribution there. That's interesting. So we'll put that in the notes. Okay, so obviously it's set cylinder 6 coil malfunction. It probably disabled number 6 injector. So again, let's clear fault codes out. Okay. Read data stream again. Misfires. Graph that. Start it up. Look at that, number 6. Number 6 is not happy. If I raise the RPMs up a little bit, smooth as butter, misfires go away. Shake, 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 shake. Okay, beautiful. So what does that tell me? There's a problem on cylinder 6 for sure. Compression. Mechanical problem on cylinder number 6. Probably due to that bent valve scenario when the timing belt broke at, 30,000 miles ago. However, that would not set the 3497 code, which disables cylinder number 4. So I don't know why the dealership recommended to replace the spool valve, which has nothing to do with cylinder number 6, and now we also have a problem with cylinder number 4 because of the parts canon, improper diagnostics. So this car has 2 problems now, I'll tell you that. Right off the bat, just by looking at the scan data, just by looking at the trouble codes, unfortunately. So, which one do we attack first? Well, we know cylinder 6 is not happy on a cold start. Once it warms up, and I saw this, when the owner dropped it off, it really becomes unhappy, sets the 3497 instantly, and cylinder 4 is also deactivated. So it's completely ridiculous. So first thing I want to do is a leak down check on cylinder number 6. So it's a TDC compression, and Honda is nice to give you timing marks on this cam pulley. So you just line up number 6. Number 6 is TDC compression. Doing a quick visual inspection with the borescope. So these are the 2 intake valves, and we're looking for signs of, if the valves hit the head or some other weird stuff. Are they sealing? Are they the same? They have an X on them. Might not be able to see anything with the borescope, anything obvious, because it's a very slight leak. Only idle you hear a partial misfire. Let's look at the exhaust valve. So rotate the 180 degree camera or the side camera by 180. Stick it in the hole. And the exhaust valves are going to be the smaller ones. Those right there. Again, pistons at TDC, you can see this is a very interference engine. There's no room between the piston and the valves. So nothing obvious. The valves look the same color. I don't see any obvious cracks or burn marks or anything. So let's put some compressed air in here and see if it's leaking out the exhaust, leaking out the intake, or none of the above. So, spark plug is out. Plug itself looks perfectly fine. Looks brand new. Iridium NGK. Okay. Pressure hose, controlled source of air, and let's turn it up. We'll do about 40 psi, and the compression hose might not be perfect, but I'm listening if there's anything going on in the intake. Maybe very, very slight. Let's go to the exhaust pipe. Don't hear anything with the exhaust pipe. So this leak is very small. First suspicion is, of course, valve clearances. And keep in mind, the problem got worse after it went to the dealer. So I don't trust their work at all, especially considering now it has two problems after everything is said and done. So we're going to have to take that valve cover off and just check all the valve clearances to see if number 6 is affected. But that doesn't explain the problem with number 4, which is setting the trouble code. So should we test drive it more? Should we reproduce the cylinder 4 problem as well? I guess we could, but that front head has issues.